All right, ladies and gentlemen, MrSotko here. Welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking about institutions buying up a whole lot of Bitcoin. And when I mean a whole lot of Bitcoin, I mean like several percentage points of the entire circulating supply of Bitcoin. We're talking in the order of billions of dollars have been purchased, and we've been waiting for these institutions for quite some time. I remember making videos maybe a year and a half ago talking about how the institutions are coming and how all these things are being set up. And well, here we are. This is sort of just the beginning of it, though, and we're talking about billions of dollars in the beginning, which I think is more than I would have thought for a while. We noticed that Bitcoin is one of the only ones that are green right now. The other ones that are green that you might just see scrolling along here are usually like a stable coin or wrapped BTC or something like that. So the last time that Bitcoin had a really good rally was in 2019. It was in the midsummer of 2019. We went to about $13,000. I think this chart just shows to going to about 13,000. But I remember on some exchanges it going beyond that, which is usually the case, as it's just sort of averaged into CoinMarketCap, CoinGecko, etc., like that. And we've seen Ethereum also jump up to over $330 plus. And now it's even higher than that. But I really just attribute that to the DeFi craze as of late, and the Litecoin, as another example, went up to about 130, I think it actually reached close to $150 during that period as well. So it just goes to show that was a pretty major period, but now we see quite the opposite. It's just Bitcoin taking off. So why is that? Well, that's because the institutions have certainly come along. So MicroStrategy now owns $500 million worth of Bitcoin, and again, this is just the beginning. This is just one of them. MicroStrategy invested $425 million in Bitcoin during August and September of this year. So it's been a little bit longer than that. So they probably have even more by now. The company's Bitcoin holdings are now worth $517 million. Business intelligence firm MicroStrategy now owns over $500 million worth of Bitcoin, having seen a surge in the price of Bitcoin over the last few months. After investing a total of $425 million in Bitcoin in August and September, as this article is, I think, a couple months old, or November. It's now November 2nd. So yeah, actually the article is a little bit close now, but it just goes to show MicroStrategy now owning $500 million worth of Bitcoin. So I think there's a fundamental difference between 2019, as that was just sort of a buy frenzy, and then of course good old 2017. I really attribute that to ICO after ICO after ICO. There was of course the Genesis mining and hash flare craze, in which you would put Bitcoin on it to actually get your hash rate, which sort of made no sense, and ICOs, which you would go out and buy Bitcoin and then buy Ethereum with it, or even buy Bitcoin to give to the ICO so that you could get your tokens, which half the time were a complete scam, unfortunately. And then I also attribute 2017 to BitConnect as well. There were some other Ponzi schemes that were, sort of paled in comparison, but BitConnect was the huge thing. In fact, I've done a lot of live streams over the years, and I've heard many people say that the reason they got into Bitcoin was because of BitConnect. They heard BitConnect from a friend, they seen an ad online, they seen a YouTuber, they seen this, that, or the other thing, and that got them into Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general. So you had to actually go out, buy Bitcoin, then give them your Bitcoin. So it just really exploded the price. Of course, the mining craze, everything was just exploding in 2017, and it was really just sort of an ephemeral market at the time. And now jump 3 years later, we actually have institutions physically buying and holding on to hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. So it's a completely different situation now, where they're holding on to the Bitcoin, and then you invest into the GBTC or whatever, the Grayscale Bitcoin, and then you get these small dividends from your Bitcoin, from an institutional standpoint. We also have backed futures, which is now actually Bitcoin backed futures, because before that we had the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, the CME futures, and stuff like that, which were essentially just paper traded Bitcoin futures. So it was basically just put your money down, and if you were correct, you're going to get more money back. Essentially just like gambling. There was really no Bitcoin going back and forth. And now with backed futures, even though it does have a somewhat small volume comparatively to some of these bigger institutions, the one thing that we are missing currently is an exchange traded fund, so a Bitcoin ETF. And an ETF is sort of like mutual stock, kind of. And mutual stock is not like buying individual stocks. Mutual stock is like investing a large sum of money. Say you have $100,000, you invest into a mutual stock fund, which is all of these long-term successful groups of stocks that you invest in, and they go up. And essentially you either buy or you sell one time at the end of a day with mutual stocks, whereas ETFs are a group of funds or stocks or something like that you can actually just day trade back and forth. And you could do that with Bitcoin. So you could put Bitcoin, either just Bitcoin itself or like a bunch of different cryptocurrencies into a package and then buy and sell them all at once on an actual exchange, aside from like Coinbase or Binance or something like that. It would actually be a listed NASDAQ sort of type exchange. And that's one thing that the crypto market is missing. And when that happens, then there's going to be a huge rally, because all the actual ETF is going to have to buy up a ton of Bitcoin for people to actually trade it back and forth, which is going to be another huge moment. So why I say this is different too is that when Bitcoin initially is going to dump, because I believe that it's probably going to go back down a little bit, and it's just the way the crypto market has been for a long time. So if we go to 14,000, it's just going to dump right back down. Maybe there's going to be a crash of a couple $1,000s in the price of Bitcoin, or maybe even $3,000, and we go back to 10. I don't think we'll ever really see below 10,000 Bitcoin again. And if we do, I think these institutions have now set aside, what the difference now is they have set aside hundreds of millions of dollars in capital that they can just pump the price right back up. Because a lot of these institutions bought around the $11,000 mark, and that's where their profit margin is. So if it goes down below that, they're definitely going to be wanting to buy hundreds of millions of dollars of Bitcoin, especially if it was in the 9,000s or something like that. Whereas before that, we were sort of relying on some whale to come along and pump it by millions upon millions of dollars, and then pump it, several hundred or $1,000 in price, and then everybody else rallies behind it. But unfortunately, with that is that the whale is just going to sell that equal amount of Bitcoin after about a week, because they're going to pump it by $500. The rest of the world is going to pump it by an additional $500, and it might go up a couple more than that. And then after 7 days, when the whale sees that it's not going to go up anymore, they're going to sell that same amount that they just invested in. And of course, they're going to come out pretty well. So that was never really a guarantee that it was going to stay up. So now I think we have this sort of guarantee that we're going to stay much higher than we are. Again, tomorrow the price could crash a few $1,000, but I really think these institutions are going to come back and start buying in. So once again, Grayscale, 300 million a day adds to Grayscale funds. So Grayscale CEO Barry Silbert shared the company's portfolio chart post on social media, announcing that 300 million worth of cryptocurrency was added to assets under Grayscale management in one day. According to the post share, the total amount under Grayscale management climbed to $7.3 billion. So once again, I showed this a few videos back, but it just goes to show the unbelievable amount that Bitcoin that has been bought up from the Bitcoin supply itself, that'll never really be going around again necessarily. So the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust is at $6.032 billion. So they have $6 billion currently in Bitcoin alone. They also have quite a bit of Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, which they have nearly $1 billion in Ethereum, and so on and so on. So these institutions are coming along, buying it really quick. And I've heard a lot of posts on, various forums and Reddits, etc., asking, is it too late to get into Bitcoin? And now, I think when people think of Bitcoin and Bitcoin gains, they're always thinking like 100x or 10x in terms of profits. And that was once upon a time. That's probably not going to happen again. Now you have to think on a much more realistic scale, and I think you've had to think on a much more realistic scale for at least 3 to 4 or 5 years now. Um, maybe since the beginning of 2017, maybe you had to think on a realistic scale. I mean, 2017 was a 20x, and I don't think that's going to happen again, because if Bitcoin goes back to 20,000, that's really merely a 2x increase from what we are now. Actually, we're at 13,000, so it wouldn't even be that. However, if I told you that maybe one day Bitcoin would be $30, $40, $50,000, would you buy in? I think you would very, very quickly. I think you would take out your wallet pretty quick and start buying some Bitcoin, because 3, 4, 5 times your money, whatever you're putting in, I'd say is a pretty good deal, regardless of the amount that you put in. Of course, the people that put in more are going to receive more, relatively, but still, 4 or 5 times your money is no joke for sure. And I think it's going to get to that one day. I think the people that think it's going to go to 1 million or 100,000 within a couple years, I think that's a pretty ridiculous statement. I think that's 2017 thinking, and thinking about how it went 20x in a year like that. I just don't think that's going to happen. But investing is always about a long term anyway. People are a little bit too impatient. If you're too impatient, then gamble away on some penny altcoins and hope that you're going to make some money, which I don't really recommend. So moving on to some additional. Now, Square is not necessarily an institution, but for this video's sake, we'll slap them in there as well. Square buys 50 million in Bitcoin, says cryptocurrency aligns with company's purpose. Yeah, now that it's worth a lot of money, huh? So Square said Thursday it bought 4,709 Bitcoin, worth approximately 50 million. So Square, essentially, the payment processor is buying up quite a bit of Bitcoin to use it as well. This represents about 1% of Square's total assets. So 50 million is just 1% of Square's total assets. So that's not too much. And when they see what PayPal has done, likely they will be jumping in on that as well. This was an October 8th article. So 50 million on October 8th. And now that PayPal is in on it as well, PayPal's new service is a $50 billion stimulus check for Bitcoin. I think that's a little bit hyperbole, but it is pretty true. So the idea is you can buy, hold, and sell cryptocurrency now on PayPal directly within the PayPal digital wallet. Unfortunately, you don't have a private key or a public key, so nobody can send you Bitcoin, and you cannot send others Bitcoin even on the platform, nor can you send yourself Bitcoin. So you have to put the money onto the platform and then buy it directly on their platform with their holder, their third-party holding solution for Bitcoin. But that third-party holding solution for Bitcoin is going to have to buy a significant amount of Bitcoin in order to be able to handle the volume of people buying in on PayPal. Now, I don't believe that PayPal is the best thing or solution for Bitcoin. I think it has some pretty good features. One of the features on PayPal that is pretty nice is that you put money into PayPal, you buy Bitcoin. It goes up and down in price along with Bitcoin, how it already goes up and down in price. Maybe you hodl for a little while. It's worth a few $1,000s more in the future. And then you can use that to, you can actually buy something using your PayPal online, and the vendor actually receives fiat and doesn't receive your Bitcoin. So it essentially just automatically converts your Bitcoin into fiat, and then you buy something with it. So say you put $1,000 onto your PayPal and then bought $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. Bitcoin goes up 30% in the future. Now you got $1,300 in there, and that's not too bad at all. I think that's actually pretty nice. Now, that's just the same if you were to have it on an exchange or any kind of wallet, so it's not any different in that aspect. But I do like the fact that vendors are going to be receiving the fiat that they want, because a lot of vendors, they just don't want to have to deal with Bitcoin. They don't want to have to deal with Litecoin or something like that. Maybe only a few people are actually spending Bitcoin there, and then they don't actually have that much in Bitcoin, and it's sort of a pain for them to sell it and do their taxes with it. So it's pretty nice that they're just going to get their fiat, they're just going to get their PayPal money, and that's that. However, since you can't mine your own Bitcoin or mine your own cryptocurrency in some way, shape, or form and then put it on PayPal to actually use it, I think that would be a much better idea if you could actually mine your own Litecoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin, if you happen to have a warehouse filled with ASICs or some other altcoin, and then you would just simply put it into your PayPal wallet and then just immediately start spending it. That would be truly revolutionary for the world, in my opinion. Like something silly like Vertcoin, and you could put Vertcoin on it because you mined 20 of them, and now you have, I don't know, $30 or something like that in Vertcoin. I don't even know what the price of it is anymore. But then you could buy something with your PayPal. That would be really nice, but they don't have that yet. So there's arguments against PayPal as well, and there's arguments for it as well. And I think some of it's, not bad. I really think PayPal is really just a place to hodl right now. And I actually don't even recommend that, because PayPal hodling, it just doesn't even sound right. But since you can't add your own crypto and you can't send crypto to other PayPal users, nor can you receive crypto or anything like that, it's really, you just put your money on there with a debit card or something, load it up with PayPal money, and then use that PayPal money to buy Bitcoin, and then it just sits there, and hopefully it goes up in price, and then you spend it on vendors. So I think it's a really good step in the right direction. I think it's their first step. I think they didn't want people adding and coming and going to Bitcoin like with your own private or public key, just because, one, you can't have your own private key because the Bitcoin is held by a third party. But if you could have your own public key, I think that would be great. But it probably would be a pain for PayPal right now, because there would be so many users losing their public key or losing their ability to log into PayPal, or they would need a lot of customer service for people that know nothing about Bitcoin on how to use it. So I think right now this is their first baby step, and obviously it's a big step because we have almost $14,000 Bitcoin, so that's pretty huge. So PayPal service is going to be a big hit, according to the article. A new survey of 3,000 U.S. customers conducted by Cornerstone Advisors and FICO found that 60% of smart owners have the PayPal app installed on their smartphone. 14% of PayPal users already own some form of crypto, in contrast to 8% of non-PayPal users. Of those PayPal users, 53% of them used Bitcoin to buy products or services in the past year, and 2/3 plan to in the next year or two. Another 15% of PayPal users intend to purchase or invest in cryptocurrency in the next 12 months. And $31.2 billion worth of retail products and services were purchased in the last year using cryptocurrencies by all Americans. PayPal users accounted for 74%, $23.1 billion of that amount. So PayPal could actually really be a gigantic step forward in the right direction in terms of cryptocurrency and switching to fiat, and also buying things with cryptocurrency, hodling with their digital platform. And I have to say, good for them. I think this is the right step. And again, this is the first step. I think there will be much more innovation and much more cryptocurrencies being added to the platform over time. But that's all I have for you guys today. I just wanted to talk about how many institutions. This is not even all of them. I mean, there's Backed Futures, there's the CME Futures doing sort of paper-traded Bitcoin, and there's many others, including like BitPay, third-party platforms that are associated with PayPal and various other services that are buying it up. So I really think that this is an unprecedented time in the sense that if Bitcoin dumps too much, these institutions are just going to step right in and buy it up as fast as they can. And this is about the time that you would definitely want to be investing into Bitcoin. Will you buy in and Bitcoin dump in price from there? It's hard to say. That's why we should always use like some kind of dollar cost averaging, just every week $100, or every 2 weeks $100 or something like that into Bitcoin. And then eventually when Bitcoin is $20, $30, $40, $50,000 in the future, it'll definitely be worthwhile to you. But it's just remember that investing is sort of a long-term thing. But make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the video. That helps me out a lot. And my social media in the description below. Give me a follow on those when you get the opportunity to do so. But as usual, I will see you guys next time.